There is a house in Gary, Indiana that has been dubbed the Demon House. The history behind this house is totally bizarre. Latoya Ammons, who is a mother of 3 that lived inside of this house with her 3 kids, she began to report to the police that demons were throwing her children against the wall. Now, when police got the report, their first thought is, you're an unfit parent. And so they sent Child Protective Services, and the police, they are shocked at what they find. And what they find is documented in a police report. In addition to the case manager, her name was Valerie Washington, the Lake County Sheriff Department also sent over Lieutenant Gruszka, who would be assisting Valerie and watching the home study take place. 8 days earlier, Washington was at the hospital with a psychologist, and they were speaking to Rosa, who was the grandmother of these children. In the room was also Andrew, the oldest son, and Amante, the youngest son. And as they're chatting, Amante, the youngest son, stands up and walks to the middle of the waiting room. And his eyes roll back into his skull, and he begins emitting this growling sound that sounded too deep for a boy of 7 years old. The grandmother reacted to it like she had seen it before. She got right up, she marched over to him, and she took him by the hands, and she yelled, "You are not you." And she kept saying that, and the boy's eyes are still back in his head, and he's not responding to anything his grandmother's saying. Amante begins backpedaling towards the wall behind him, and Rosa holds his hands the whole time. She's holding his hands firmly. He gets to the wall, and instead of stopping, he puts his foot up against the wall. This is a 7-year-old boy, and begins walking up the wall by pressing against Rosa. And she's holding on tight, and he's pressing back at her and using that weight to walk backwards up the wall. The psychologist in Washington are just watching in disbelief. Rosa's holding on to him as he walks all the way up to where he's on his tippy toes on the wall. And then he flips forward in front of her and lands on his feet on the other side of Rosa. The psychologist and Washington literally run out of the room, and they go get a doctor, and they explain what happened. The doctor comes in, not having any clue what to make of this, and just says to the boy, "Can you do that again?" And Amante at this point, his eyes are back to normal, and he's sitting now next to Rosa, and he says, "What? I didn't do anything," and acted like he had not been walking up the walls. After this story, 2 more police officers show up to the house to assist with this home study. One was Brian Miller, and the other was Charles Austin. Latoya says that she and her kids will not go back in the house because they had moved out. And so Rosa, the grandmother, Latoya's mother, she offered to go in with them. And so they go in.